What's up, people? It's Bet and Breakfast on a Monday before Thanksgiving. The usual Monday crew is here of Peter Dewey, Reed Wallach, and myself, Ben Heisler. Gents, it's good to see you. Got a bunch on the show today. We will, of course, have our early leans for Week 12 in the NFL. Starting with, of course, the Thursday slate. We'll have a full breakdown of those games coming up on this week's later Bet and Breakfast, so you guys are going to want to stick around for that. We will also go through our best bets for Monday night. Got it nice and spread out today. We got Reed looking at college hoops. Peter, of course, has the NBA, and I'm looking at a total in the matchup for Monday Night Football tonight. But guys, we're going to talk about this a little bit later on over at BetSided. The overreactive nature of the NFL is already starting to find its way up further and further and further. Look no further than the talks of Jonathan Taylor as an MVP candidate after his 5-touchdown game against Buffalo. And I will commend Jonathan Taylor. Like, we talked about it on this very podcast. I had mentioned that Jonathan Taylor, every time he runs for over 80 yards, the Colts are 11-0. They're now 12-0 in those games. And sure enough, they just beat the hell out of the Buffalo Bills. But are we losing our collective minds here? If Derrick Henry can't win an MVP after last year, Jonathan Taylor's not winning an MVP. Like, right? Reed, I know you're fully on board of moving away from everybody that's jumped on the Jonathan Taylor MVP bandwagon. This is silly.
Yeah, I went to Wisconsin. I watched Jonathan Taylor run all over the Big Ten, all over. Like, I love Jonathan Taylor. Doesn't mean he's an MVP candidate. I mean, this is a quarterback award. I mean, the Colts are 6-5 now. And I get Jonathan Taylor. He's likely going to win the rushing title. Maybe Offensive Player of the Year is an apt award for him, but not MVP. What are we doing here?
Are you on board with this, Peter? Are you willing to shake things up a little bit and make it interesting?
No, I can't. And it's almost like it's not even a knock on Jonathan Taylor because he's having a great year. It's just the Colts aren't that good. Like,
exactly.
if they were like a guaranteed playoff, like if they were running away with the AFC South right now, like I guess you could make the argument like he's the best player on arguably one of the best teams of football. They're not even first place in the division. They're like barely hanging on to like staying in the playoff picture. I like he can have as great a year as he wants, but Ben, you make a great point. Like if Derrick Henry wasn't going to win it last year, you cannot tell me that Jonathan Taylor deserves to win it this year.
You're right. Now, credit to NFL.com because they sent out from their communication staff some insane stats. And I'm not going to give you all of them because you'll have to find that a little bit later on today over at BetSided. But he ran for 204 scrimmage yards on Sunday, 185 rushing, 19 receiving, 5 touchdowns, and the Colts 41-15 win against Buffalo. Just keep this in mind.
Insane stats.
These are unbelievable. So he's 22. He's the third player under the age of 23 with at least 5 touchdowns in a single game, joining Clinton Portis back in December of 2003 and Gale Sayers. And he's the 5th player all-time with 4 rushing touchdowns and 1 receiving touchdown in the same game, joining Sean Alexander. Abner Haynes back in 1961. Shout out to our guy Brian, who knows a thing or two about Abner Haynes. I'm just kidding. Dub Jones, Gale Sayers, all on that list. So he's joining some pretty elite company. There's another stat with him and LaDainian Tomlinson. There's another one with him and Adrian Peterson. Like, the stats are very impressive, but we would all agree collectively, right, that if Derrick Henry didn't win the award last year after 2,000 yards rushing in a league that no longer supports the 2,000-yard rusher, let alone a 1,500-yard rusher, because that's where Dalvin Cook was right around, he's not getting it this year.
I'm surprised Jamal Charles wasn't on that list, Ben, of like the things that Jonathan Taylor did. Jamal Charles, it was a long time ago now, but he had one of those monster like 50-point fantasy games back in the day, and I'm surprised he's not on that list.
No doubt about it.
You almost have to give it to the Colts offensive line if we're talking JT MVP. I mean, he's a product of the system, right? Like a running back is only as good as his offensive line. So, again, I don't see it. It's one man's award to lose, and it's number 12 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's his award. It's Tom Brady's award to lose.
All right, so let's talk about this award to lose because Reed was puffing his chest a little bit when we were listening to the Open today because you can hear the clip of Reed talking about Tom Brady as his MVP pick. And this was several weeks ago when you still had a very crowded field. Now, the numbers are still yet to be determined over at WinBet, but we should know them a little bit later on. But I want to sort of provide this hypothetical for you guys, for our listeners. I'm curious to see where you guys are at. Get a $100 free bet to win MVP. Are you going with the favorite? Are you going with somebody like Brady? Are you sticking with your pick, Reed? Or are you maybe going for a little bit more of an outside shot? Maybe a Lamar Jackson, maybe Patrick Mahomes is starting to move his way up. Remember, guys, Mahomes a couple weeks ago was 75-1 over at WinBet to win the MVP. And now he's probably going to come out maybe closer to 10-1, 12-1, maybe even lower than that. So are you going for value or are you going for the sheer, I feel like this guy's going to be in the conversation all week long? And Reed, I'll start with you.
Getting the free bet makes me want to look at someone like Mahomes, maybe Rodgers, but it's Brady. He has a clear path to run away with this award. If the Bucs get a top 2 seed in the NFC, Brady's going to lead the league in passing yards and passing touchdowns, and he has the easy narrative. He's 44 years old. His final MVP season, I think he's only won like 3, which it feels like he should win more by now. It's Tom Brady. So like a final, almost like legacy award for Brady. I think he's going to come out of the favorite after this week, assuming they beat the Giants as favorites. So, again, this is Brady's award to lose. So I'm going with the guy that's going to win, and it's Tom Brady.
What about you, Pete?
I'm going Patrick Mahomes. Ben, you and I have been on this train since he was back at, like you said, 75-1. Like I think the narrative, I agree with Reed, the narrative's there for Brady. The narrative's there for Patrick Mahomes. If they go and they win out and they win the AFC, or if they finish 12-5 and they come in one of the top 2 seeds in the AFC, like, what's the reason why? It's Patrick Mahomes. Like, he's going to throw 40, 45 touchdowns. He's going to throw for 5,000 yards. Like, the numbers will be there. And the fact that everybody was writing Kansas City is dead and gone, 7-8 weeks into the season to then they potentially could win the AFC. Like, the narrative's there for him as well. And like the fact that they've gone from where they were, 3-4 weeks ago to now they like have the AFC West in the palm of their hand at this point. It's actually kind of wild. And he's going to be the reason why. So that would be my bet, because I just think there's so much value in it.
I'm curious to see whether or not the Chiefs defense holds up, because I think part of the argument for Mahomes was, well, he's going to have to win you every game because the Chiefs defense is garbage.
He hasn't been.
They've been substantially better over the last week, and especially that performance against Dallas. Granted, they were without Amari Cooper. CeeDee Lamb ended up leaving that game with a concussion, but the Chiefs defense is monumentally better. And I think it was the second time this year that he didn't throw for a touchdown pass. So there's something to be considered about, even though Mahomes is kind of hanging around and the Chiefs go on a run, he's going to be in consideration. But let me reintroduce you guys to Justin Herbert. We talked about guys putting on a show on Sunday night. Mahomes did it last week. You got to admit that Justin Herbert did it last night. And if the Chargers somehow, because I made a joke the other night on Twitter that, it's the Chargers and the Raiders just giving it back to Kansas City. Like, they had the division. It was their division. The Chiefs had given up on it. And the Chiefs were like, you know what? We kind of want it back. Samesies, takesies back, whatever they say in preschool anymore. I don't know. My son has come up with the line. Like, they're taking the division back. But the Chargers had every opportunity to blow that game yesterday. They didn't do it. And so now I wonder if Justin Herbert, you might be getting him on the wrong side of the value, but compared to everybody else, he's still an afterthought. And if the Chargers win that division, guys, I think you're looking at Justin Herbert, who started the season as a top 3 MVP candidate. I think that's possibly a value play that not a lot of people are considering today. What do you think?
I don't hate it. I don't know if I believe in the Chargers enough to bet Justin Herbert, but I see the logic behind your bet. I could get behind at least like the reasoning behind it.
All right, you see the wheels turning.
The Chargers defense, similar to Mahomes almost, like the Chargers defense is going to have to step up to allow Justin Herbert. Because like Justin Herbert's been fantastic, but the defense, they almost lost them the game last night. So like
that's why I don't know if I can get behind the Chargers as like a contender.
A team, that's the hard. That's the hard part. Is can the team be good enough so Justin Herbert can win MVP?
It's one of the few futures bets within the division that's still fairly competitive. Like, it's still the Chiefs to lose, but the Chargers are still hanging around. It's like minus 165 last time I looked. The Chiefs were minus 105 in that division. So they're there. It's just a matter of being able to move forward, have a solid second half schedule. Remember, if they beat Kansas City, that's a huge tiebreaker in that division. They already beat them at Arrowhead this year. So something else to be able to consider as well. Let's dive into some early leans for the week. We, of course, have the 3 games on Thanksgiving, a ton of college football sprinkled out anywhere from Thursday to Friday through the rest of Saturday as well. So let's go around the horn here. Peter, I'll start with you. taking a look at the slate for NFL, for college football. We always love doing this on Mondays because we like to get the lines where we feel like they're going to be at its best value. So tell me the team, tell me the matchup that you're going to dive in on the earlier side this week.
Yeah, Ben, I'm looking at the Carolina Panthers. They're +1 right now against the Miami Dolphins on the road. I think this line's actually going to move where Carolina closes as the favorite, to be honest with you. And I'm selling high on the Dolphins in this spot. I know they've won 3 games in a row. It's come against 3 of the worst defenses in the NFL. The New York Jets and the Baltimore Ravens have the 2 worst yards per play defenses in the NFL, and the Houston Texans are 6th. Like, I don't believe in this Miami offense. They still average the 2nd least yards per play in the NFL. Like, this team is not good. They were getting them as a like, the fact that they're a favorite is crazy to me. Like, they beat the Jets, and they barely beat the Jets on Sunday. Yeah. So I'm out on the Dolphins. I think the Panthers, their defense has been 2nd in the league in yards per play. They've been really good all year. I know they got beat up a little bit by Washington this week, but I think their offense is better with Cam Newton under center than it's been all year. Christian McCaffrey looks healthy. I will gladly take them as an underdog. I would play them like all the way through almost anything under 3, like as favorites. This is just no way that I'm backing the Dolphins in this game.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I liked Washington this week just because I felt like the line was slightly overvalued for Carolina with Cam coming back, but there was a noticeable difference within that offense being able to get things moving. It looked like the early season Panthers where they were finally hitting receivers in stride. They were taking some chances downfield. There was more of a threat. So I'm with you. I like the Panthers, and I like the fact that you can get them as underdogs right now. That line is definitely going to move. Reed, I know that you're going back to the college football between Notre Dame and Stanford for this game. Who do you like?
Yeah, I've been having really good weeks with college football. NFL last week, not my week at all. Completely washed away the big college football week. So we're going to stick with what's working, college football. And I make numbers on every game. And sometimes when I'm way off on an opener, I like kind of go back in and look. But this one just really jumped out at me. Notre Dame is -18 against Stanford. These are 2 teams in just polar opposite regions of who wants to play and who doesn't. This is Notre Dame's last regular season game. They're trying to get in through the back door of the college football playoff. So they're looking to run it up. They've been their last 3 opponents, inferior competition, 119-9. I mean, they have just been stomping teams. They won 55-0 last week. Stanford, on the other hand, they just lost at home to 3-6 Cal with their starting quarterback back from injury, 41-11. They are done. They're 3-8. Their season's over. They've lost a combined 128-32 over their last 3 games. They have no interest in playing. Notre Dame's about to go to Stanford and just beat the snot off of them. They're going to run them off the field. I made this line about 26. Notre Dame -26. So I'm willing to go all the way up to 3 touchdowns with this one. I think Notre Dame puts up another big number on Stanford. And, the Irish are going to hope for a little bit more chaos to get in maybe that 4th spot in the college football playoff.
All right. I never thought to myself that I would be ready to pounce on a -18 line, but I think when you compare it and set it up that way, that it's actually a full touchdown less plus a 2-point conversion based on your projections, that certainly has my attention.
And again, I don't feel like that's like when I usually am like, okay, maybe I just like missed something here, but looking at like the actual optics of the game, especially nowadays, like with the quit factor last week of the season, who wants to be there? Notre Dame wants to put up a big number. They want to embarrass Stanford. So I like Notre Dame anything under 3 touchdowns.
All right. I like the play. I think I'm going to go back to the NFL for this one. I'm just convinced this line is going to move. And I don't know if it's necessarily reflective of whether or not I think it's the right number or not, but I do think there's value there. And there's also the question of whether or not CeeDee Lamb is going to play or not. Most likely he's out. The Cowboys are going to bounce back this week, back at home against the Raiders. I know that there's a intriguing trend to fade home teams during Thanksgiving. For road teams, it's a business trip. For home teams, they have the distraction of playing in the middle of the week during Thanksgiving. But Cowboys coming off that loss to Kansas City are going to be motivated to turn things around. They've played much better at home. But I think the Raiders' performance, 2nd straight game that they've been blown out at home by 21 plus points. Guys, this number for the Cowboys, regardless of whether CeeDee Lamb plays or not, is going to go up. It'd be stunning to me if this doesn't close it around maybe -8.5 or even 9, because they're such a public team. Pete would know something about public teams, so maybe I should be asking you as public Pete. It also did feel like the Chiefs defense may have legitimately turned the corner and they're looking like the Super Bowl contender that we anticipated. So for them to go on the road, for Prescott not to have 2 of his best weapons for, good portion of the game without a Cooper, without Lamb. I just don't think it said that much about the Cowboys offense. I think this is the right number, even without Lamb. But I do think regardless, that number is going to climb. So I like getting on Dallas on the earlier side. Go ahead, Reed.
No, I agree. I think this number is staying, above a touchdown or better, or touchdown or higher, I should say. I think, especially with the way the Raiders have looked the past few weeks, definitely a team that is not going to, in my opinion, receive much backing.
Also, we didn't talk about this on our list, but something we'll write about, and actually something we covered a little bit earlier in the week over at BetSided. The Eagles' schedule down the stretch might be amongst the easiest in the league if you're looking at some potential futures there. They play the Cowboys, but it's not until Week 18, and Dallas should have that division wrapped up within the next couple of weeks. So one other matchup to possibly consider moving forward. All right. Let's get to best bets. Let's go around the horn. Reed, I'll start with you for this one. We got college basketball, we got NBA, and we got a play on the total for Monday Night Football between the Giants and the Bucks. And the Bucks are an 11-point home favorite. If that feels like a lot, it's because the Bucks are averaging over 40 points per game at home. We'll get to that in a second. But Reed, I start with you. College hoops on a Monday. We got these little mini tournaments going on. And take us through the bet that you like the most.
Yeah, I like Seton Hall money line against Ohio State around like minus 120-ish. Seton Hall went to Ann Arbor last week and beat Michigan. Not a fluke, in my opinion. Ton of experience on this roster, ton of size. Tyrese Samuel, their big man. He's going to match up with E.J. Liddell for Ohio State, give him trouble. Liddell is really their all-encompassing forward. He does it all. He was great against Xavier last week in a loss. And Ohio State's trying to integrate in a new point guard, Jamari Wheeler from Penn State, and it hasn't really went that well. Seton Hall has the perimeter defense to force Ohio State off the line and size to stifle them inside. I just think Hall's the better team. It's on a neutral court, so I'll take the cheap price and play Seton Hall to win this one outright.
All right, Pete, who do you got in the association tonight?
Yeah, guys, had a nice start to the week after a horrible week last week. Was 2-1, almost had the Knicks cover, which would have been a nice 3-0. But I'm looking to the Timberwolves Pelicans game tonight. And I'm taking the Timberwolves -3. I mean, two real quick. One not so hot take and one hot take. One, the Pelicans stink without Zion Williamson, so I'm fading them every single night that he is not until he comes back. Two, Anthony Edwards is here, man. Like, he is year 2 here, averaging 22.5 a game already. Just, he looks very polished as a scorer already. I'm surprised that his efficiency has been up this year because I figured he was going to get more shots and we might see that dip early in the season. But he's been really good, and the Timberwolves have been really good over their last 4. They've covered in 4 straight. Their only loss in those 4 games came to the Suns by 3, and the Suns have looked like one of the best teams in the NBA to start this year. And they've moved themselves from 28th in the league in offensive rating to 20th over the past week. So their offense is clicking. They just hung 138 points on the Grizzlies on Saturday. His team is trending up. They're playing a bad Pelicans team, even with Brandon Ingram back. I don't trust the Pelicans. I know they beat the Clippers in their last game, but this team is just not good at all. And the big thing for me is Minnesota's defense is very underrated. They're top 10. Normally we're used to Timberwolves being horrible. They're a good defense, and the Pelicans have the 26th offense. This game is going to be a blowout, I think, for Minnesota. I love them at -3.
Wow, yeah, especially when you consider everything there. And don't forget, too, and a good point by you, Reed, that the Pelicans are 7-11 against the spread over the course of the season. So factor in Minnesota on the rise, covering in a lot of games. The Pelicans been under 500 substantially. So far, I like both these. We might have to add it to the show card. We'll see whether or not you guys agree with mine in the NFL. But I'm going to go with the over in tonight's Monday Night Football game between the Giants and the Bucks. There's something to be said, as I mentioned, about Tampa Bay playing at home. And normally in primetime games, you tend to fade Brady against the spread. He's actually been substantially under 500 over this last run, but he's also been very good against the spread coming off a bye. We mentioned the fact that the Bucks are dropping over 40 a game at home. And for as putrid as the Giants have been on offense, they're actually scoring a decent amount of points on the road. Their best offensive performances have come on the road. We also know about the Daniel Jones splits, a substantially better player away from MetLife Stadium. Bruce Arians has an outstanding record against the spread as 13-7 in his over-under record over the course of his coaching career in Tampa Bay as a home favorite. So everything is kind of lining up for both teams to put up some points. And Saquon Barkley is going to be back. They're not going to be able to run the ball in Tampa Bay. No one, frankly, can. But Barkley can still catch passes. Kadarius Toney can stretch the field. Giants, I think a lot of people kind of look at them and think this is just about as bad of an offense as you can have. But there are weapons on this team, and they've started to see a little bit more of Kenny Golladay in the mix as well. So I think even if they put up, 17 points, considering what the Bucs have done at home with that type of number, they average 40, drop it down to 34 to 17 still has the overhead. And that's how it's all playing out in my head. But I think it makes a lot of sense. I think you'll see some points in this game, back-to-back primetime games where the over will hit. So there you have it, guys. That is our best bets for Monday. Full show of Bet and Breakfast. Again, if you missed any part of it, you can go back here on YouTube, watch the video, or you can download the podcast wherever you get your podcast from. So appreciate you guys waking up with us. For Peter, for Reed, I think I'm pointing in the right place. I'm Ben. If we don't talk to you guys, have a great Thanksgiving. Otherwise, we'll see you back here on the podcast a little bit later on this week. So long, everybody. Have a great rest of your Monday, and may all of your bets hit.